You are watching TVC News.
Hello and welcome. This is TVC News. I am Ugochi Oluigbo. The top stories. Mali arrests Mauritanian involved in last year's deadly attacks on sites popular with foreigners. Libyan unity government gets major lawmakers backing as President Obama debunks plans for ground troops. Tanzania government calls for fight against arms proliferation. Glad you could join us. A Mauritanian man suspected of planning and carrying out a string of deadly attacks on sites popular with foreigners in Mali last year has been arrested in Bamako. Malian security confirmed the arrest. The man is also suspected of planning the deadly assaults on the Radisson Blu Hotel in Bamako in November and the Byblos Hotel in central Mali in August. The November 20th attack on the Radisson Blu left 20 people dead, including 14 foreigners. Terrorist group Akim claimed responsibility for the assault. The August attack on the Byblos Hotel in Savare killed 4 foreign employees of the UN mission in Mali. Security expert Gabriel Adetunji Ajayi commended the Malian government.
The definition of terrorism is not the same around the whole world. One person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter. That is why we have people who are collaborating with them. Let me tell you, most of these radicalized, we call them Islamists, are, from various countries of the world, but share the same idea. So definitely, some of those who are fighting in Nigeria may not actually be Nigerians also. Some of the deadliest may not even be Nigerians. So I'm not surprised at what they have in Mali. But I congratulate them for a job well done, and I pray that they will be able to continue to grab as many as possible those that are disturbing the peace of humanity. So it's a good way forward, and we should copy Nigeria by trying to grab those of them who are giving us headache in Nigeria.
And investigators into the crash of an Air Algeria flight in Mali that killed 116 people in 2014 have called for expanded anti-icing protection, better procedures and training. A final report of France's BEA agency presented in Mali and Paris focused on way pilots respond to problems. After an investigation lasting almost 2 years, the BEA said it could not exactly explain the crew's actions because of a faulty and damaged cockpit voice recorder. However, it confirmed earlier findings that an anti-icing system had been left switched off as the plane flew from Ouagadougou. Tanzania's government has called on other African countries to join the fight against syndicates engaging in illicit proliferation of small arms in the region. According to Tanzanian Vice President Samia Suluhu, those guilty of the act should be brought to book regardless of their status or position in the society. She made the call at the 8th Ordinary Session of the Ministerial Council of the Regional Center on Small Arms in the Great Lakes region, the Horn of Africa and bordering states in the city of Arusha. The Vice President urged member states to strengthen efforts and focus on harmonizing their legislation, mounting joint cross-border operations and marking small arms and light weapons for easy tracing. In a world that is being shaped by terrorism and religious suspicion, a religious identity is now a huge factor in forming education policies across the globe. Correspondent Bukola Samuel Wemimo examines this issue, which formed the debates recently at an education conference.
Let's join our hands and close our eyes. Because of your divine grace, we are standing here, Father. We thank you for your mighty presence, Father.
Assembly prayer in schools, a morning ritual hitherto taken for granted, may now be considered a privilege, as some state institutions now frown at it. The constitutions of the United States, Canada, even France prohibit public prayer in schools. It is also true that whether in public or in private, individuals are uncomfortable with a religious discourse. The 2016 edition of the Global Education and Skills Forum features a potpourri of sessions this time with debate chambers. One of such explored the controversial subject of mixing religion and education with the proposition, "This House believes there should be no religion in schools." Those in support of the argument were Naomi Verlaine, a science teacher, and Professor Yusri Mazuki, an assistant professor at the Qatar University.
The way I interpreted this debate is the question of where should the prayer be? And I do not believe that it should be happening in school.
On the flip side were Lord Andrew Adonis, a former British education minister, and Rolando Jr. Villamero from the UN Youth Advocacy Group.
Religion, and by religion I include versions of humanism and the big ideologies which are very religious in their content and having a worldview and so on, are part of society. They're part of human life, they're part of our culture, they're part of our families. You cannot ban them from schools.
In Africa, one case that resonates with this debate is found in Osun State, Nigeria. Here, the practice of religion in schools may not have been restricted, but the merger of same-sex and faith-based schools has continued to generate controversies. Notable is the protest by the Baptist community against the merger of the Baptist Girls High School Oshogbo, now Baptist High School, with an Islamic school. The permanent secretary, Osun State Universal Basic Education Board, chose to explain government's position this way.
As individuals, we perceive things differently, but to a large extent, the educational policy of the state government has been well received by all religious bodies in the state.
But all may not be well as the permanent secretary may want the public to believe, as these reforms have necessitated the introduction of new school uniforms, replacing the hijabs in some schools, and by extension, engendering a court action in Osun State.
We've had complaints from some of the students that they will use hijab, their teachers will seize the hijab from them, and at the same time beat them. And freedom of religion includes freedom to manifest the religion.
U.S. President Barack Obama has dismissed suggestions that the international community will deploy troops to Libya to enhance its unity government and fight the so-called Islamic State group in the country. Obama says that the single act will mean sending a wrong signal to the public. Libya's unity government may not be getting all the support it needs. The internationally recognized parliament, which was forced out of the capital by factional violence, has refused to vote Libya's new government. But the good news is that a majority of members restated their support and urged it to start work. The parliament's approval is a vital part of a UN-backed plan for reconciliation. UN envoy Martin Kobler, who was in the East earlier this week, expressed his profound disappointment at the failure of the parliament to vote. TVC News returns after this break. Stay with us. You're watching TVC News. South Africa's largest opposition party, the Democratic Alliance, launched its manifesto in the economic hub of Johannesburg on Saturday. The party has set its sights on winning the strategic province of Gauteng, the country's most populous province. Over 25 million South Africans are registered to vote in the upcoming local government elections in August. TVC's Southern Africa correspondent Valdi Corrales fired with this report.
Just one of the thousands making his way to the Democratic Alliance manifesto launch in Johannesburg. Job Piani is a party candidate in one of the poorest areas in the city, a DA member for only 2 years. Ahead of the launch, he spelled out his expectations of party leaders.
Johannesburg is turning blue if you can turn around. We are going to make we are winning this metro. We are weakening ANC. There are people who have been left in a very bad situation. We need to change their lives.
These elections are said to be fiercely contested as South Africans continue to express unhappiness over corruption in government and the high unemployment rate. The DA already governs one of the 9 provinces in the country and support for the party is growing. In the last local government elections, the party won 24% of the vote and runs 18 councils. This time around, it hopes to chip away at the African National Congress's majority by aiming election messages at the youth.
Our poorest school children are being neglected, and the gap between the performance of poor children and rich children is widening every single day. It can't be right that young black South Africans are still falling behind in terms of skills and jobs. That is why in 2016, the face of poverty still remains black. And that is why it is true when we say the ANC governs as though black lives don't matter.
The party's message seems to have been well received.
We young girls, we are not working. Most of young people, we are not working because of corruption these days.
We need change in South Africa, so we have to vote for DA if we want to see that change.
They are serious about service delivery, and they have got zero tolerance as far as corruption is concerned.
It's this message that Piani and others will take back to their communities in the hope of drumming up more support for a party they say will change the lives of the poorest South Africans. Baldi Karlse, TVC News, Johannesburg.
Oscar Pistorius' family has condemned a new book whose author alleges that the Paralympian beat his late girlfriend Reeva Steenkamp with a cricket's bat before he finally killed her. The book claimed to reveal fresh evidence of an argument between the couple, in contrast to Pistorius saying that he mistook Steenkamp for an intruder when he shot her through the door of his bedroom toilet. Pistorius told his trial that he used the bat to smash open the door after he realized he had shot Steenkamp by mistake at his house in the South African capital, Pretoria. Pistorius' family said it had been forced to deny the allegations following the wide media attention given the book. The Department of Petroleum Resources has sealed off a major filling station for allegedly diverting petrol in the northern Nigerian states of Adamawa and Taraba. The Controller of Operations, Department of Petroleum Resources, in charge of both states, Musa Akin Sunday, accused AA Salusi petrol stations of diverting more than 190,000 liters of petrol meant for the region. Akin led journalists to one of the stations in Numan local government area of Adamawa State, where the diverted product was intercepted.
The companies are AA Salisu. More recently, the one that we went to during the visit was AA Salisu in Numa, under Adamawa State. It has diverted 3,000 liters, and when the station was sealed, it returned the product. And right now it's being sold to the public at government approved price of 86.50 kobo. We have intensified our efforts to make sure that we go through our records, we visit all the stations to check for any possible violation. We are working hand in hand with the DSS, with PPMC, and oftentimes we are also working with the civil defense. And I want to assure the public that those who are violating will soon be sanctioned, and they will have to pay the penalty of violations in due course.
At least 171 world leaders have signed a sweeping climate agreement negotiated last year aimed at slowing global warming and helping poorer nations affected most by it. The Paris Agreement has a handful of goals: prevent an increase in global mean temperature of more than 2 degrees Celsius and a push for a tougher 1.5 degrees Celsius, require countries to set their own national targets beginning in 2020, mandate reporting included and non-binding transparency to show if countries are meeting their targets, allocate funding for small island countries most affected by rising water levels without assigning liability or implying any nations in particular must compensate them, creation of a $100 billion per year fund not included in the agreement but made by commitments by wealthy countries and the private sector to offset the cost of changing technology and climate change to poor countries. Held on Earth Day, the Paris Agreement will come into force as soon as 55 countries responsible for 55% of the world's greenhouse gases have ratified the accord.
The United States looks forward to formally joining this agreement this year, and we call on all of our international partners to do so.
It is time to declare no more talk, no more excuses, no more 10-year studies, no more allowing the fossil fuel companies to manipulate and dictate the science and policies that affect our future. This is the body that can do what is needed. The world is now watching. You will either be lauded by future generations or vilified by them.
You're watching TVC News. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Mali arrests Mauritanian involved in last year's deadly attacks on sites popular with foreigners. Libyan unity government gets major lawmakers back in as President Obama debunks plans for ground troops. Tanzania government calls for fight against arms proliferation. Still ahead on the news, Kenya creates database for poached ivory. Details in a moment. Stay with TVC News. This is TVC News. Ivory talks are put into pause in Kenya in order to burn them on April the 30th. But this time, the country has made a huge inventory of each and every piece of ivory to make sure no piece go missing before the big bonfire. Kenya is among 25 African countries that have adopted a declaration demanding a total ban on ivory trade worldwide. The countries, through the African Elephant Coalition meeting in Cotonou, Benin, have called for immediate and decisive action to save the African elephant. Representatives from the countries stressed that African elephants are facing the worst crisis since 1989.
At this point, we're doing an audit of what is coming out of the container, and this is coming from data that we collected during the inventory process. The inventory process was a process where we recorded each and every piece, put it in a database, and now as we put it out from the container, we make sure that each container from each location has exactly what we put in there.
Before they burn it, it's important that they know how much they have, what does it represent in terms of weight, in terms of pieces. Is there any other scientific information they can know from the ivory by taking a DNA record? So even after they dispose it, they have good data that they can use for scientific purposes.
A strong explosion shook a residential building in the town of Nonacot in northern France this Saturday. Local media citing police sources report that 4 people have been injured while 1 is still buried under the rubble but conscious. Another 2 more are unaccounted for. About 30 residents are believed to have been evacuated from the building following the blast. Reports also state that a part of the building has collapsed. A university professor has been hacked to death in Bangladesh in an attack police say is similar to killings of secular bloggers and atheists by suspected Islamist extremists. 58-year-old Razul Karim Siddiq was a professor of English at Rajshahi University in the country's northwest. He was attacked with machetes by an unidentified assailants while on his way to the university from his home. Police believe that he may have been targeted by suspected Islamist extremists because he was involved in cultural activities. Hundreds of students at Rajshahi University are reported to have protested their teacher's death on the campus while demanding the immediate arrests of the perpetrators. 6 people are missing after a landslide buried a workers' facility in southwest China's Yunnan province on Saturday. They were reportedly guarding construction materials in Guali village when the accident happened. 20 soldiers have been dispatched to the sites of the accident as a rescue operation is currently underway. Reconstruction work has started in Ecuadorian town Chamanga 1 week after a deadly earthquake. Some shops in the town have reopened to better meet people's need of daily necessities. Local authorities have also organized people for door-to-door delivery of relief supplies. The 7.8 magnitude earthquake struck on April the 16th at its epicenter at a depth of 10 kilometers. Buildings were destroyed, though no casualties have been reported. To sports now, Kelechi Iheanacho struck twice as Manchester City moved up to 3rd after condemning Stoke to their second 4-0 defeat in a week. Fernando opened the scoring at the Etihad Stadium after 35 minutes before Sergio Aguero converted from the penalty spot 8 minutes later to double the host advantage. After winning the penalty in the first half, the impressive Iheanacho got in on the act himself after the interval. He grabbed two expertly taken goals on 64 and 74 minutes to seal a comfortable victory ahead of Tuesday's Champions League date with Real Madrid. Elsewhere, the Sun Tadish scored twice as Southampton East passed relegated Aston Villa 4-2 to keep alive their faint hopes of European football. Eden Hazard scored his first league goals of the season as Chelsea overcame Bournemouth 4-1. Newcastle boosted their hopes of survival by coming back from 2-0 down to claim a point at Liverpool. Leaders Leicester City host Swansea City on Sunday without the top goal scorer Jamie, who's suspended after his sending off against West Ham last week. Disgruntled Arsenal fans will have to get behind their team as the Gunners take a trip to battling Sunderland at the Stadium of Light. And before we go, here's a recap of our top stories. We told you that Mali arrests Mauritanian involved in last year's deadly attacks on sites popular with foreigners. Libyan unity government gets major lawmakers backing as President Obama debunks plans for ground troops. Tanzania government calls for fight against arms proliferation, and Kenya creates database for poached ivory. But that's the news of this hour. For more details, do visit our website, tvcnews.tv, and also join the conversation on our social media platforms using @TVC Connect. Thanks for watching. I am Ugochi Oluigbo.